This is Terms of Reference. I'm your host, Stephen Laddick. Michael Ketover is a highly experienced independent consultant currently working with the Peace Corps, USAID in Ghana, and a USAID implementing partner. Michael is a returned Peace Corps volunteer and AmeriCorps VISTA alumni. He was hired by the Peace Corps in 2000 as a program and training director for Papua New Guinea and Ecuador. He has also served as interim country director at 11 Peace Corps posts for a total of 4 years and a senior advisor to the CFO at Peace Corps headquarters focused on internal controls and agency risk assessment. Before and after Peace Corps, Michael worked as a senior inspector at the Department of Commerce's Office of the Inspector General, as an evaluator of USAID and MCC international development programs, as a corporate lawyer and human rights and poverty law attorney, and in emergency and disaster response. Most recently, Michael worked on a USAID Feed the Future project in Ghana and on criminal justice strengthening activities in El Salvador and Mexico. And, as you'll hear in the podcast, Michael's band, The Strangely Optimistics, will be releasing new music this summer. I hope you enjoy it. I spoke with Michael in Arlington, Virginia. Hi there, Michael. Thank you so much for being on the Terms of Reference podcast today.
Hi, Stephen. It is a pleasure and an honor.
Where am I calling you today? Where are you sitting in the world?
I'm sitting in Arlington, Virginia today.
Yeah, I know that that's an important question because you are just a rock star. You're all over the world. You're an independent consultant right now. What gig are you working on right now?
I was up at 5:30 this morning. I had a phone call with some colleagues in Accra, Ghana. I've got a short-term intermittent consultancy with the USAID mission there related to a government-to-government resiliency project in the north. So we were having some conversations about actually the context of Ghana's decentralization challenges this morning. And that's what I was doing until this phone call.
We usually don't dive into technical details on this podcast, but I got to know, give me what are the two big challenges for the decentralization of northern Ghana?
Well, USAID, as some of our listeners might know, has been promoting local solutions and what they call USAID Forward initiatives for the past several years. And Ghana got out in front and is directly funding district-level entities in the northern part of Ghana, which has the highest malnutrition indicators, to work with the district-level agriculture and health and environmental health offices. So Ghana's decentralized on paper for 20 years, but this is actually 2013 was the first time where a budget was decentralized. So there really aren't systems yet to move the money between the district assemblies and the ag office and the health office and the environmental office. And there's certain issues with gender balance, and there's issues with accountability and transparency and the availability of electronic systems and training. So it is a bold experiment, and I'm very excited to be part of that.
So I now immediately have to ask you, you just talked about agriculture, health, legal proceedings, government interaction. What in the world kind of background does someone like yourself need to have in order to be a player at that table?
This particular job I would describe to folks as I'm sitting in a health office. This is when I'm in Ghana, sitting in a health office promoting soil conservation, income generation, and good governance, platformed on public financial management. So at this point in my career, I've worked in all of those realms. I've got a undergraduate degree from Amherst College in Massachusetts, where I studied natural sciences and majored in political science. And I also have a certificate from the Pan American School of Agriculture. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras some years ago, they sent us, those of us who spoke Spanish already, to the Pan Ag School, Zamorano. So I've got some natural resource background, and I went to the University School of Law at Vanderbilt in Nashville, where I studied quite a bit of environmental governance and land rights, admin law, that type of thing. Plus, I worked in a CFO's office when I was pulled back from the field from Peace Corps when we closed Papua New Guinea. So I've got a bit, I think I can pose talking about PFM, public financial management. This one's a little bit more involved than many of the other assignments, but that's my background.
So take me through that. So, you started out with looking at environmental sciences. Was that specifically chosen in order to find your way in international development, or how did you get there? Was it ultimately through the Peace Corps?
Well, I got my law degree, and then I worked both in the corporate realm for a very short time, and then I worked as a legal services attorney, and I did a gig as a VISTA volunteer after I did my law degree.
For those who don't
And
know, what's VISTA?
VISTA is Volunteers in Service to America. It's what's under the AmeriCorps banner these days.
Okay.
And it's the same enacting legislation that both Peace Corps and the Senior Volunteer Service was formed. Anyway, so when I was in grad school, in law school, I did quite a bit of legal services work for credit and did quite a few internships to kind of get out of the classroom and get some more substantive experience. And I had a bent for public service at that time, but with the loans, I thought I would take a corporate job and pay those off, which didn't last very long. So at that point, I was interested in public service, and I was a member of the Journal of Transnational Law, so I did have the international interest at that point. And then not until a colleague of mine with whom I was working in southern Arizona on the reservation, the Tohono O'odham Native Peoples Reservation, said, why don't you think about Peace Corps? I hadn't really thought of doing international development work overseas. So that was really my entree once I got into Peace Corps after I did several years of legal work and got a great position in Honduras working with small farmers and their families on mostly, I'd say, 8th grade soil science issues. And that really, I was hooked.
I think that particular story right there might speak to quite a few people in our audience who, didn't choose the Peace Corps out of their bachelor's degree. They've been in the workforce for a while, but it's not, as you discovered, it's not really where they want to be, and they want a different alternative. Can you talk about that a little bit? What, you said that you spoke with your friend and they mentioned it, but was there a moment where you're like, this is the right move for me, or was there a way that helped you to decide? And also, how did your experience, you think, how is it different than someone who just sort of came out of their bachelor's degree having that corporate experience when you got to Honduras?
Well, the big shift for me was when I left my corporate firm in downtown Miami that had a lot of perks, a lot of bennies to that job, but the work was kind of boring. I used to call it monkey work, and with no disrespect to my legal colleagues, certainly, it just didn't resonate with me. But then when I became a VISTA volunteer, from a corporate job, that was the big paradigm shift in my mind. Like, okay, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm actually doing it for some job satisfaction. And then kind of taking that a few years down the road when I made the decision after doing legal services law, which I loved and I think is an extremely important position in our legal system. But then making the jump to go to Peace Corps wasn't as big of a jump. It didn't feel that big for me. But I turned 30 in Peace Corps, so I wasn't like super old, but I was at least 5 or 6 years older than most of my colleagues who had either graduated from the university or grad school or had worked a year or two or were looking for work and thought that the Peace Corps experience could get them relevant hands-on experience overseas. So I've met over the years, I've been a Peace Corps overseas staff, almost every position overseas, and actually right now I'm working with Peace Corps on another intermittent contract, and so I'm kind of working on programming, training, and evaluation with the Peace Corps headquarters team, and I've seen a lot of people come in right out of the university, right out of grad school, or even 10 or 15 years after a different work experience. And to me, it worked for me to ground me in terms of what was important to me in terms of job and job satisfaction, but also to make sure that I could manage life overseas and have my feet on the ground while I'm providing technical assistance and be able to do that in a way that was useful. And I would hope moving the envelope forward.
So after you completed Peace Corps, did you find yourself going back into, a development firm or, a large NGO or something to continue your career, or did you stay a consultant and were you able to leap from there?
After my first Peace Corps tour, I extended because I loved it so much, and I helped open a new Peace Corps program in Guyana, South America, that had been closed for 38 years due to some political issues there with a leader called Forbes Burnham, who had passed away by that time. So I did another year and a couple of months there, and that was amazing because I got to work with UNICEF there and use my law degree on some children's rights issue while I was helped setting up a new Peace Corps program. And I parlayed that into a couple of legal jobs with UNICEF in Guyana and also in Barbados. And then I got more into training. So Peace Corps started to hire me to do technical training in different parts of the world. And then I started, building relationships and creating a resume of international development work. And from there, I did that for 4 or 5 years, and I got into starting to get into evaluations of Peace Corps and other development organizations. Yeah, I didn't start with implementing partners until several years ago. So I'd really been working directly with, I would apply to AID, BPAs, blanket purchase agreements, or I would apply directly to MCC, and they would hire me to do evaluations. So
so when you're saying you'd apply, are these public tenders that were out there, or these are?
Yeah, these were tenders that were publicly available. I didn't know anyone. We hear a lot about the relationships that we use to get our names into different positions. And for me, it's been about half and half. I just cured a position with one of the 8 implementing partners for a rule of law project in Salvador, where I'm heading on Saturday for a week. I was there a couple of weeks ago. And again, that was just a cold resume. And similarly with some of these other ones, I've been fortunate in that way. Again, all this Peace Corps work is 100% through relationships. And Ghana just is asking me to come back while we're moving to Eastern Europe, but they asked me for another intermittent contract in 2015. So those are through relationships too. I raise that because early on in my career, when email was new, it made it a lot easier to stay connected with folks. I was never really comfortable calling someone up, just to kind of reconnect and to keep our relationship warm. But with the emails and with all the social media now, it's really quite easy to stay connected, and that is important.
Okay, yeah, that's I'm glad that you've broached that. It's really interesting to hear that you think you feel for your consulting practice, it's been about 50-50 of just sort of blind tenders. It's one of the things we hear about the most at Apreneur is, people say, how do I get past the machine with my CV? How do I, get into that meeting in order to get hired? Is there any advice that you have about, maintaining those relationships, or is it just about, it's about being, in your case, a nice guy and making sure you follow people that you've connected with, or is there any particular tool or technique that you use for that?
Well, thanks, Stephen. I used to have on my resume that I was respectful, pleasant, and hardworking. I took that off recently because people told me it was kind of cheesy. But
those are really cheesy. You should never be respectful, pleasant, or hardworking.
That was right. That was right. That was right on my profile. The first couple of things, because I wanted people to know that when they deal with me, they're going to get someone who works as hard as they do, and respects their opinion, comes in with an appreciative inquiry, and has some solid technical background. I raise that because to me that's the most important thing. And if people have references, and I know the references, and I trust and respect the references, to me that's as important, the talent and the interpersonal emotional intelligence, than the technical work in many of these positions. Because so many people have the technical capabilities. It's just who do you want on your team and who can you go to and enjoy the work, because the work is often stressful, and you want to. I'll use I statement. I like to work with people with whom I can enjoy the day and then the evenings too. So I think that the networking piece. I reached back to my VISTA boss, the guy who name's Chuck Teagarden, a guy who suggested Peace Corps that I mentioned earlier, through Facebook, and I hadn't had any contact with him for years and years. And it's just great to be back in touch, and it was great for me to be able to tell him what an influence he'd been on me, and I had no idea if he even remembered the conversation, when he suggested Peace Corps. Hey, Mike, you're pretty hardcore. I bet you could do Peace Corps. I'm like, I never really thought of Peace Corps. And so I'm not as savvy as some people in terms of the Twitter or the Snapchat or some of the other social media, but I am on the Facebook, and I do use email quite a bit, of course. So For the folks that are right out of school, when people say to you that are in the business, they're doing these gigs, stay in touch. We mean it, because we wouldn't say it otherwise. So reach out, because at least in my experience, we're always looking for solid folks to do this good work.
That's awesome. Speaking of this good work, I'm lucky enough to know that you've had lots of very interesting and challenging assignments, but one in particular I'm thinking about is your contribution to the closing of a Peace Corps office. And if I remember correctly, that was in Honduras. Could you tell us about, what's that kind of assignment like when it's a challenge, when you've got to work with people in a tough situation? Is there any particular story that stands out from that about how the work went, or something special or unique about that process that you thought, really helped to make it work well?
Thank you for remembering that, Stephen. I was asked to be part of an assessment team that went to Honduras and also to El Salvador. This was about 2.5 years ago, to determine what's the viability of Peace Corps' continued presence there with volunteers in the field with the deteriorating security situation. We made recommendations to the director's office, and in Salvador, the program's still open and it's much consolidated, but it's working. And in Honduras, the decision was made to close the program. And after that assessment, I was asked to facilitate the transition conference with 150 or so volunteers and staff in Tegucigalpa.
Are you able or allowed to tell us, like, was there a linchpin or a straw, supposedly, that you said, okay, this is, we have to close it because the security situation, like, was there an event or anything like that, or was it just a culmination of everything?
It's more of the latter. In both countries, it was just increased security incidents against volunteers. The rates were spiking. And in Honduras, there was a straw that broke the proverbial cameloid's back when a woman was on a bus and there was a robbery and a gentleman came on, and then another armed robbery, but a guy on the bus had a gun and there was a gunfight and she took a bullet in the leg and she survived. But that was the impetus for the Honduras assessment. I think I can say that we did suggest a consolidated program in Honduras and some of the provinces, departamentos that had fewer safety incidents and that had fewer road. The real issue is how do you get the volunteers in public transportation back and forth from their communities. That's where a lot of the violence was. They're quite safe in their villages. And I served volunteer in Honduras, so I had some, inherent biases there. So we tried to keep it going, and it wasn't. And that was a director's management decision, basically, managing and trying to mitigate risk. So I also was part of the close down in Papua New Guinea. I was the acting director there for a while we were assessing the closure. And that place, not many of us have gotten to work there, but it is another world. And unfortunately, the security situation has gone downhill since we closed it, which was more than 10 years ago, with Australian military and police presence increased to keep law and order on the streets. That was a very interesting experience. The American ambassador at the time, wanted to have additional discussions about, the Peace Corps, which is an independent agency's decision to suspend operations. And there were a lot of really interesting stories that came up from those conversations. Yeah, it's
any of those interesting stories that you can tell us?
Well, I think it's long enough ago that I can talk about the embassy has different, we're all one team overseas, but the embassy's missions are often, if I can boil it down, perhaps too grossly, into democracy and capitalism, which are both great things to be promoting as an American, North American. And the perception of the Peace Corps program pulling out after 20 years was seen as potentially deleterious to the business community that was extremely active in Papua New Guinea and also in what's now called West Papua, but Indonesia has a different name for it, Irian Jaya. There's a lot of extractive industries, the fish extraction, the timber extraction, the gold extraction, etc. So the discussions were more about the perceptions of Peace Corps pulling out and how that might be perceived in the business community. And, without getting into too many details, the pushback, from a small agency, from a relatively young country director to an ambassador were interesting and memorable in my mind.
That's interesting. One of the things I like pulling these stories out because I know that you probably had 5 million of them. As someone who's you've worked in so many different countries, you've been operating on your own. We're really good at talking about our successes, and we're really good at talking about when it's when the work is good. Is there a time when you've just sort of fallen on your face, completely failed, or you were part of a team that it just didn't work out? Tell us about that story and what you did to either overcome it or, turn it around or, simply walk away and get another gig.
I don't want to jinx myself. Haven't had.
I have just officially jinxed you.
I'm looking for some wood to knock on. I've certainly had my share of challenges and struggles, and I would say failures perhaps on conversation levels, but I haven't sunk the ship yet in terms of an actual job, which is a good thing. And believe me, I've got a long way to go. So that's, I'm sure, forthcoming. I think more on my, I was in Nepal several years ago, and I just didn't get the cultural nuances. And I was having conversations with some of my colleagues, about my egalitarian vision of how Nepal should be, without the caste system, when, you can actually shake hands with people who are serving you the food, where women have equal status. And that just rang so hollow. And I know that for the rest, and it was a short-term assignment, but I know that did not do me professional good. And without getting into too many issues about Nepali culture and caste system, that was something that definitely negatively impacted my work there. And when I made recommendations, my sense is that they said, okay, this guy's gone. He didn't respect our culture. We're not going to respect his recommendations so much. So that was one very specific example where, and I thought I did my background research, and I knew, but at that point in my life and career, and I probably still might, I say my mind in a hopefully respectful way, but it doesn't always ring true to the folks that are listening. I've had plenty of failures on what I consider my sub-career, which is rock and roll. And as a fellow Stephen, I wanted to play you. Here we go. Got a couple new tunes.
That's awesome.
This one's called Better Rainbow. Got a friend in Ghana who's going to be putting in a saxophone part, and another friend plays the djembe, a hand drum, and that will hopefully complete this. Here we go. Here's the... All right, enough of that.
That is so fantastic. We're going to definitely have to put the link to that on the podcast for this.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I know you're rocking too. So
that's how you stay sane.
I do.
All this travel and everything. Where do you find the time to put that in your life?
Yeah, I play. Last week I was at this 1 week. They called it Program Training Evaluation Advisory Board with the Peace Corps. They asked me to facilitate 9 people from overseas and 9 people from headquarters. I tell you that because I just got the mix of this song back, and I hadn't really had time to listen to it on speakers. I'm listening to it on my phone, and I'm running in, and last week had a bunch of snow and snow days, and I was feeling like my work was getting in the way of my music, which was kind of funny. But I carved out some time, and anyway, I play music still.
I think this is really, we could be kind of tongue in cheek about this, but I think this is a quintessential or fundamental piece that many independent consultants feel like, right, or have issue with. How do you take time off? How do you create space for these things? Do you have a strategy where you say, hey, look, I'm going to work 200 days this year, I'm going to work 100 days this year, and I'm going to give myself that time? Or do you try to pack as much in, or is there a conscious thought about that?
There is conscious thought. Thanks for asking, because I don't really, or I rarely articulate this, but I'm a hustler. I've always been a hustler. I want to be working all the time because I really love the work, but I'm putting in full days and even weekends because I love the work. And luckily at this point in our life, my wife, she's equally engaged in learning a new and difficult language. So she's studying or going to the gym and cooking. That's kind of her life. So it's okay for me to be on the computer all the time. Also, our family situation is such that it allows that. But for example, for the music, I wanted to get to the studio, and I had to carve out some time where I I actually turned down some work so I could organize time to go into the studio and then to go back in for the background vocals and for some of the fixes and to put in some other tracks. And I was frankly a bit sheepish about when people would say, because I know a lot of the folks who are asking me to do some work, and I'm saying, well, it's because I've got some music. I want to go to the studio, and I say it, and I smile, and they don't know if I'm serious or not. But it's for me, it's very serious. So I cut out that time, and I've got a fairly heavy schedule for the next 6 weeks of travel. But then I'm coming back, and I basically blocked off 5 weeks where I can visit friends and family in the States, because I am in the States for a little bit more, and that's a good thing. And but people say, oh, can you go to Namibia and do this for 2 weeks during that time? And I certainly could, and the work would be great. But luckily, we're in the position where I can say, well, I'd rather spend some more time with my parents and spend some time with my friends on the West Coast who I haven't seen in 3 or 4 years. So it's at this point, yeah, it's a conscious decision to kind of carve out some time for the rock and roll and for the family and friends, but and the exercise too. Love used to beat me soundly in tennis, but just working on my forehand, got to put some time in for that too.
Nice. The next time we see each other, I will put you to the test. In that regard, on that same line, how do you organize your practice when it comes to administration? We've heard that most of your work, it sounds kind of like your referral network right now, it continues to sort of supply you with enough gigs that I don't know how much you're going out there and bidding, but how much time do you sort of divide up between acquiring new business, performing the work, and then just sort of billing and administration and finances and those kinds of things?
Right. It goes in waves. At some points, I'm putting together one of my half dozen resumes and keeping it updated and sending it out to the black hole of, the UN system or other things that, I'm always interested in, whether I can get responses like from Food and Ag Organization. I'd love to do some fisheries work for them. But so I always send out certain feelers to jobs that are a little bit more interesting to me. In the implementing partner world with AID, there's always stuff that I'm interested in and that I would hope to be qualified for that I send out. At this point, I'm not sending anything out because I'm basically unavailable for a while. But I'm spending, it was just tax season, so spending a lot of time on the finances and the whole business exemptions and all of that stuff. I'm despite my organizational skills, I still don't use like QuickBooks, which I should. So I've got these folders and all that. So I spend probably more time than I should on that side of it. I'm really spending most of my time on the work. And I just got a report back from my Salvador position. It was a 25-page report with 25 pages of annexes, which is too much, and probably 1 or 2 people will read. So I've got some feedback on that I'm incorporating, and between the Peace Corps work and this work with Ghana that I'm still engaged with, it's mostly the work. It's probably about 90% work right now, but we moved to Eastern Europe this summer, and I suspect that I've got a couple of things lined up, but I'll be out there hustling again, looking for jobs.
That's a great lead on. Take me through that. Like, what would happen? What would be your process? You're going to land in Lithuania. You'll obviously reach out to your network over email and social networks and stuff. But will you also make the rounds in Lithuania? Do you think there's enough opportunity there? Or what will have you thought about how that'll work?
Yes, my language skills, I've chosen not to take a quick course. There's a 2-month course I could take to learn Lithuanian, but I'm engaged with work, so I chose not to do that. So I'm going to learn a bit on my own, but it'll never be good enough to work professionally, I don't think, but in the time I'm there. So my sense is my work there will be traveling to places where I already have some work set up, such as Ghana. They've asked me to continue to work on this program over at least the next year, so I'll have some work there, and then I'm on, Peace Corps gave me a 1-year intermittent contract, so I've still got some time with that. And then hopefully I can find some work in some of the places where I haven't worked, such as if Ukraine opens back up, I think there'll be some opportunities there, and I might be able to get by with my English. and Moldova and Kosovo and the places where USAID and Peace Corps have some presence in Eastern Europe, just to mix it up for me professionally, and also to have a little bit shorter trips. So that would also be something interesting. And what I would do, I get on DevEx, and start looking for jobs. I get on the different implementing partners websites, and a lot of them now are linked, so it's just updating your resume, and it's fairly easy now to apply, which goes both ways because it means a lot more people can do it with a lot less effort. But if you've got something that stands out, sometimes they call you back. I'm still at about 1 out of 25, and even a response when I send stuff out. So in terms of having thick skin and being resilient, yeah, I get not even I get nothing on most of the things I send out.
Yeah, we've on our blog and on Adepreneur, I've talked often. I love that you called it the UN black hole, because that's exactly what I've called it as well. I think everybody has an understanding there, and it's also great to hear that someone of your experience and background and skill set and everything. You're saying 1 out of 25, you don't even get a response. That's an unfortunate way to give confidence to others, saying, hey, this is not an unusual experience even for somebody who's been doing this for a long time.
Right. And it's, the harder we work, the more we put out. If it's 1 out of 25, then we put out 50 resumes, and there's 2 jobs and we're good for 6 months. So, the harder we work, the more we create the more we create our opportunities. So
nice. 2 more questions for you. The first one is forward-looking. What's the next 5 years look for you? And we know you're moving to Lithuania. But do you think that there will be a shift in your professional life? You ever think about starting an organization or walking away from development, or do you think that like the universe will be sort of the same in 5 years?
Well, I'm the trailing spouse, so my wife followed me for our first chunk, and now I'm following her. And as long as she's happy doing what she's doing, I'm happy doing what I'm doing.
I think that is a very, very smart move, just to let you know.
Yeah, and she's a professional. She's doing great things with her career, and she's in the State Department. So, I don't want to mess that gig up for her, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to find my little gigs here and there. So, yeah, I think this is going to work for us. I got out of the development business for 5 years when I worked for the Department of Commerce, OIG, and I was doing a lot of fisheries work. And I thought, oh my gosh, I love this. And there's international fisheries work involved, so you could kind of touch the development scene, at least on some of the enforcement and sustainable fisheries practices. But I'm out of that business now, and those are some of the ones that I sometimes kind of throw out there and see if I can get back in. And I was actually shortlisted 1 of 2 on something, and the timing didn't work out, so I know that we're still kind of ballpark. But no, the next 5 years, hopefully we're 3 years in Lithuania, and then Kelly's next tour will be somewhere else. And hopefully I'll just be doing the same stuff, and maybe I'll have a couple more songs out by then.
Sweet. So the last question I ask is one I ask of every guest in terms of reference, and that's, you've given a few nuggets of information, gems of advice along the way in our conversation here, but for people who are coming out of that master's degree or bachelor's degree, or who have made the decision to sort of make the leap and transition into development work, what's your 1 or 2 pieces of critical advice about how to create both satisfaction and sustainability in this career?
Well, I think even taking a step back, when you're in a grad school, to take advantage of whatever opportunities there are for out-of-class experience, because we just hired a young woman who just got a master's in nutrition, and she's a registered dietitian, and it wasn't clear to me from her resume whether this field work in Botswana, which was extremely relevant to the position we were hiring, was part of her graduate school or not. And as it turns out, it was all graduate school, but we gave her credit for it. We hired her, and she's amazing. So the more that, to me, it didn't matter so much ultimately whether it was part of the grad school. It was the work that she did while she was in Botswana that was directly relevant to the nutrition work we're doing up in northern Ghana. So that, I guess, to get out and to get as many diverse experiences as you can with with CSOs, with civil society organizations, with government organizations, with church-based organizations, all of that is valid and relevant. And then to answer more directly your question, I can just talk from my experience. It's really feeling passionate about the work that I do, and to feel like it is helpful in some way and that not only can you make a career from it, but you are, in a modest way, helping to better the situations for whomever might be the beneficiary of the projects with whom we work. So to me, it's the job satisfaction, it's the meaningful aspect of work, and also for me, I get joy in working hard and producing. I love meeting deliverables, and we're all not wired that way, but I think in this business, the more that we are deliverable and result-oriented, while we're being pleasant folks, I think the better.
Michael, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a awesome conversation.
You're welcome, Stephen.
And we're done. You've been listening to the Terms of Reference podcast from aidpreneur.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes.